Okay, hello everyone. This is Ronnie from the UK Fruitfest and the Love Fruit podcast. We have another fantastic guest this week. We're really happy and grateful to be joined by Dr. Areli Cuervas Ocampo. I hope I've pronounced your name
Yeah,
correctly
it was
there.
great.
Excellent, thank you. And Dr. Areli has been obviously making a lot of waves online on social media, Instagram, and so on, not just in the English language, but also in Spanish as well. And she currently lives in the UK, I believe, and works as a neuropathologist, a medical doctor. So it's very interesting to speak to someone who comes from the medical side of things, but is also passionate and interested in the raw vegan diet. She was at the UK Fruit Fest last year. She was also at the Canada Fruit Fest last year. And she was also the first person we're going to reveal that will be speaking at next year's UK Fruit Fest in
Ooh.
2020. So we're really looking forward to having you there. So, Dr. Areli or Areli, however you prefer to be addressed, could you let us know a little bit more about yourself, maybe just some introduction and some things that I've missed out, maybe?
Yeah, no worries. I mean, everything was perfect. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, I am a physician, medically trained. I did medicine in my country, Mexico, and then I did pathology in my country as well, but with plans on moving to the US. So that's what I did. Get all the exams and credentials and all the bureaucracy basically for to get more training in the US. And I
Hmm.
did most of my training in pathology and neuropathology in the US for over 6 years. And then I got a job here in the UK. But along my journey, during medical school, I was always sick, and not only during medical school, but all my life. There was something always um, attacking my well-being, let's put it that
Oh,
way.
hmm.
And I discovered vegetarianism first, and then I transitioned into veganism, and then I read more and more about it, and raw veganism just made sense, based not only in the logic but also from the medical and biological and physiological perspective. I think is the next step for those who are embracing veganism nowadays. They will realize sooner or later, that raw veganism is the best option in the plant-based diets.
Wow, that's fantastic. So I didn't actually know you started off in Mexico. That obviously explains the fact that you're fluent in Spanish as well.
Yes.
And you moved to the US. You've moved to the UK now. How did that happen, and why are you here at the moment?
Well, because I'm not a US national.
I see.
So the exchange for foreign doctors that train in the US to stay and remain in the country is to serve in a rural area for 3 years before you can even apply for a green card. And I had the opportunity to do that, but the areas that I got offered jobs were not my cup of tea. And then I just I just decided, you know what, if I'm not gonna live in the place that I want for the next 5 years of my life, I would rather explore other options. And I got interviews because my specialty is so difficult to find people that do what I do, which is brain analysis. Um, I got a job offer in Toronto as well as here in Bristol in the UK. So, pondering the benefits, pros, cons, I just decided, why not? Let's try the UK, and that's why I'm here.
Fantastic. That's
Yeah.
great. Um, yeah, so let's go into a bit more detail though about your journey towards a raw vegan diet because it is quite unusual for people to take that step. So
Hmm.
you were talking about some of your health issues and why did you start to move towards changing your diet in the first place? What was the first thing that happened? And I know that potentially as a doctor you might not get a lot of I don't know if there's a lot of emphasis on diet in medical school. It might be interesting to hear about that as well, but what was it that made you start to make changes in your diet and experiment with that?
Yeah, unfortunately, even nowadays, nutrition science is not taught in medical school as it should, because the system is designed for doctors to treat symptoms and diseases rather than prevent diseases. So, because of that, nobody in the medical system, nurses included, unless they learn by their own means, are knowledgeable about proper nutrition. So, I never associated the fact that I was sick with diet. So since I was growing up, I suffered from Well, first of all, the most noticeable change, if you see my before and after pictures on social media, is obviously weight loss with this lifestyle. But I always struggle with constipation, poor circulation, um, fogginess, all the things that result from bad circulation. And bad circulation means that your blood is not uh, like a easygoing fluid, is
Mm-hmm.
sticky because of the diet. So basically all the problems that I had were related to diet, but I didn't know about it until I wanted to lose weight. And overweight and obesity are just byproducts of a bad diet. Some people, never gain weight and they eat terrible, but they could die of heart disease and nobody imagined that. So it's just like a manifestation, and I'm glad that I had that physical manifestation, which was overweight, before other diseases manifested, on me. So that basically made me consider doing lifestyle changes and diet changes, but not knowing anything about nutrition. That was back in 2007 when I was in my last year of medical school. So I asked a colleague, hey, what can I do to lose weight? And she recommended the Atkins diet. And I tried the Atkins diet for a year.
Mm.
And obviously, the reason why I lost weight with the Atkins diet is, for those of you who don't know, Atkins diet is similar to the paleo diet, which you only eat animal products, no vegetables, no grains, nothing, no carbs, just protein, animal fat, and protein. So I did that for a year. I lost weight, but it never crossed my mind that the reason why I lost weight was because I was on an elimination diet. Obviously, I cut off processed food, bread, everything processed, and I only stick with meat and animal fat. So that's why it worked. But I never felt great. I always had acne. The circulation problems still were there. Then, I said, well, there must be something else, because I was not happy. I didn't have energy. I mean, I was just surviving and being okay rather than being great.
Yeah.
So I researched, and that was, as I'm telling you, more than 10 years ago. And I came across vegetarianism for sustainable weight maintenance. And that caught my attention. And then one thing led to the other. Next thing I tried was veganism. So I was vegetarian for 4 years, but the dairy was still there, a big
Mm-hmm.
addiction that I had. And
Mm-hmm.
the acne and the overweight, I was always like in this yo-yo dieting pattern. So finally, I watched Earthlings. My veganism had to do also with health issues, but also ethical
Mm-hmm.
reasons. So I watched Earthlings. I went vegan overnight after watching that movie. And then, the knowledge came, and the interest on researching more about diet and why dairy is bad for you and all that. So I don't know how long or why it took me so long to embrace raw veganism, because along the journey of discovering vegetarianism towards currently being fully raw, I knew about raw veganism when I explored vegetarianism. I discovered some videos on YouTube, like I think Marcus and Cara were the first ones that I watched. So but I never implemented it. And then, there are different modalities of how to follow a raw vegan diet. You have the high fat gourmet raw vegan, you have the raw until four and all that. And I try all of them, but then, it's just physiologically, logically, and from the medical point of view, to avoid inflammation, to keep your body clean
Mm-hmm.
and efficient. High fruit, high carb, low fat, plant-based raw vegan diet is what we are designed to eat. I just came to that conclusion. And not only, um, as a mental exercise and as a medical association, but also because I was experiencing it on myself. It wasn't until I stick to it that I really started experimenting changes. I haven't gained massive weight, I
Mm.
haven't been playing with these yo-yo diet patterns since I switched. So for me, it just makes sense. And it's not only making sense, as I'm telling you, there's scientific basis for this.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah.
And thanks very much for going into more detail on that. How was your transition to a raw vegan diet? A lot of people find the transition, giving up certain foods, they find that quite hard. How was your transition, and maybe also what were who were some of your mentors and the people that you were looking to for inspiration on that journey?
Definitely. So my transition was over a 2-year period. I was vegetarian, and then I discovered raw until four that was popularized by Freely and Durian Rider back in 2000s, early 2000s. So I just followed that approach for a couple of years, but I gained a lot of weight. And then I discovered, well, not discovered, rediscovered people that were doing it the whole way. And I guess my inspiration was basically Marcus and Cara, but then I realized, no, fruit is, is the key. Fruit is the key. So I was watching Ted Carr, Lisa Raw Food Romance, Tani Raw, obviously the UK Fruitfest people and the videos, everything related to fruit, the 80-10-10 book by Doug Graham, and many other authors, that not only claim that fruit is our human specific diet, but also uh, to keep our body clean and our immune system strong. So the transition was that, like, for a couple of years I was flirting with fully raw and then going back to cooked, but then my body got cleaner and cleaner during those fully raw periods. And whenever I went back to cooked food, it was like you know one step backwards, but very backwards. And that
Yeah.
really made me understand the importance of keeping it raw.
Mm.
Yeah, so it was a hard transitional phase, obviously, because we are addicted to cooked food, and I don't know, it's just so hard. I understand that people have hard time, but once you stick to it for probably 3 weeks, and then it's like, you know, everything runs smooth. You have cravings once in a while, but
Yeah.
they're less and less intense.
Let me ask you, so you mentioned you used the phrase they're addicted, like the cooked foods are addictive, and you have a good knowledge of the brain and everything. Do you have any more information for us on how that works and why are certain
Yes,
foods more addictive and things like that?
definitely. So we are addicted to food, to cooked food, for two main reasons. One is because the emotional attachment that we have. Obviously, you live in the UK, I do now, and we always reward ourselves with, oh my God, after a long day at work,
Yeah.
you need like comfort food, cooked
Yeah.
food, and that gives you like, that pampers you, that gives you like a home feeling and a feeling, actually.
Mm.
So that numbs you and distracts you from your traumas or things
Mm.
that you need to work on when you're fully awake. So that's the addictive part, emotional component. The other component, obviously more biological, is the microbiome. So the microbiome is the millions of living microorganisms that we harbor, not only in our bowels but also in our skin, everywhere. We are actually more bacteria in numbers than human cells.
Yeah.
So in the small bowel and in the colon, we harbor millions of bacteria and other microorganisms that constitute the microbiome, and they actually are the leaders of our cravings. So it is logical to think that if you keep cheating
Hmm.
here and there with cooked food, and if you're trying to transition to raw veganism, you're not letting the old microbiome die. The same microbiome that is craving cooked potatoes or rice or quinoa or every single cooked vegan food, which is not bad per se, but as you know, in the long run, it doesn't give you the vitality that you can attain. So it's just there. So once you let the microbiome that is no longer serving you for your goals or raw veganism die, uh, the microbiome that craves raw living food is going to be more important in
Hmm.
number, and the cravings obviously are going to disappear, because remember that the enteric nervous system is also called the second brain, is located in the intestinal walls. So we have neurons there. We have a whole set of hormonal systems and networks that work with the microbiome, the neuronal receptors, all the neurotransmitters that get released whenever we eat something. So it's just like a whole world, and scientists are still finding out the mysteries of the microbiome, but it
Mm.
just makes sense. If you have the microbiome that craves cooked food, it's because you haven't let it die off.
Mm. Mm.
Yes.
And some people will say to me that some people talk about that and they use the word parasites, and I don't know if they mean the microbiome, but some people they say that when they feel addiction to other foods, they say that's the that's the parasites inside me. I need to let these parasites die off. But what do you think about that when people talk about parasites? Do people have parasites inside them, or are we really just talking about bacteria which are
Yeah.
not?
So there, within the animal kingdom, we have multicellular organisms which are very complex, like humans, and then you have cats and birds and spiders and mosquitoes, right? And then if you go down and down at the microscopic level, you have unicellular organisms, which are bacteria, which is only one single cell.
Right.
And you also have multicellular microscopic organisms which feed from others without giving you anything in return. So those are parasites, and those are the worms and all these little worms that you can see microscopically. So those are parasites. Everybody has parasites in any stage or in their life. It's just a matter of like the balance between the good microorganisms versus the bad microorganisms. So if we are strong in our immune system, even those tiny traces of parasites, which are worms, do not do anything to you. Some people have severe diseases, especially the ones that consume raw pork meat, or like
Yeah.
actinias, like very long worms, like
Mm.
serpents basically. So those are big parasites. But when people say that they still have parasites and that they want to do a parasite cleanse and all that, it can be true if they harbor these big worms, but that's something very difficult to prove. um, I don't think you need any parasite cleanse or anything like that. Probably
Mm.
they're just confusing the microbiome and making or blaming the parasites. They use that term to
Yeah.
say I still have microbiome that craves cooked food. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So what would a typical day look like for you on a raw diet? Like from the morning to night, do you have a typical day? Does it change every day? How does it look for you?
Yeah, so there are two scenarios. One is the ideal scenario where I have control of my time and I plan everything. The other is I have to improvise based on the workload that I have that day. So the ideal situation would be, okay, I wake up around 5. I do exercise in the morning, empty stomach, just water. Then I take a shower, or I go cycling to work and I take a shower at work. I start working around 8 when I'm ready, 8:30 more or less. And I'm not hungry until 10 a.m. more or less.
Hmm.
So if I'm prepared and if I have food in my drawer, or if I go to the grocery store, which is I'm fortunate to have, on the corner, in the corner, a grocery store, I buy, for example, just to give you an example, yesterday I ate like 2 cases of grapes.
Hmm.
I prepare myself a smoothie with 2 bananas, bunch of spinach, a few dates, and celery and chia seeds. So that was my greens, right?
Hmm.
Sweet and celery, kind of savory to kind of balance. Some people can go with fruit only. I prefer to mix fruit with greens because that gives me more balance. I think it's just a personal choice. Um, so that will be for my morning. So I have most of my calories in the morning after a long fast, because I'm going to tell you I stopped eating around 6 p.m. So that will be my meal at 10 a.m. Then I don't have lunch like regular people at noon. I sometimes have my lunch at 1 or 2 p.m. And that will be another 6 persimmons, for example. That's what I had yesterday,
Mm.
plus 2 heads of romaine lettuce, or 1 head probably. And then if I come home and if I have time, I will do like a salad,
Hmm.
chop uh, red uh, red peppers, cucumber, spiralized cucumber, a few slices of avocado, lemon juice, maybe some chopped onions, or um, tomato. I love tomato. I can eat a lot of tomatoes in my salads. And some spices, probably some cumin, or um, sometimes just chili pepper, or
Yeah.
sometimes lemon juice only, and some squeezed orange. it's so simple. Before I
Yeah.
used to complicate things a lot, but now I've learned that my stomach loves simplicity. So that's basically the planned diet. When I don't plan my day, what I have to do is I stop at a salad bar. Here in Bristol, we have a falafel place where you can actually make your own salad, and I only eat the salad. Plus, I bring in my backpack some lettuce or a case of tomatoes in case I'm still hungry.
Mm.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. That sounds like a pretty simple day that a lot of people could follow, and I think a lot of people listening could replicate something like that. So that's great. And what other tips would you have for people that are beginning on this journey towards raw?
Yeah. So there are some raw vegans that eat constantly during the day, and that's fine. However, in my personal experience and following the rhythms of the day, I think it's more convenient to start eating not very early. Just do physical activity, get
Mm,
yourself distracted in other things. And once you're really hungry, start eating, but don't overeat. I guess a good tip will be to stop eating once you are 80 to 85% full. You don't have to be like super,
hmm
you don't have to have a huge belly. So that will be one tip. The next step will be to follow the circadian rhythms, which is stop eating when at the sunset time. Don't overeat at night. Don't wait until 9 p.m. because that's going to create indigestion. So that will be another tip. If you can practice intermittent fasting, great, which is eating within an hour, within a 8 window period. Some people do 6 window period. But for beginners, you need to eat constantly until you develop that stomach capacity to handle
mm,
1,000 calories in a single
hmm
meal,
hmm
which is what I do, basically 2 main meals a day and one snack
Sure.
in between. But for beginners, probably they can find it easily to constantly feed themselves until they find their rhythm. But key for me, even as a beginner, is to stop eating at sunset time and not to eat first thing in the morning. You just have to get used to it, and it's gonna be uncomfortable for the first days or weeks, but it's a habit. Any habit requires a little bit of effort and discomfort at the beginning.
Excellent. No,
Yeah.
that's great. Um, what mistakes do you see people make who are going raw or trying to go raw? I'm imagining you probably get a lot of comments and questions. And what are the kind of common mistakes you see?
Yeah. Probably eating unripe fruit, um, and eating just a few calories because obviously their stomach capacity is not that high. You will be amazed, like the amount of food that I eat. I mean, people that are not into this lifestyle, I can eat a full watermelon and I'll
Mm,
be fine. But at the beginning it wasn't like that. So eating few calories, that will be number one. People feel always hungry because they don't eat enough calories. um, the other problem will be not incorporating enough greens. People think that only fruit, and it's okay. If you live in Hawaii and you have access to ripe fruit all the time, all year around, that's great. But for me, I think that some minerals can be deficient in the soil, and it's not the same as buying Tesco apples than going to a orchard of apples with organic apples. So not
mm,
many people have access to quality fruits, so you need to keep your greens on check.
mm,
That
mm,
will be a thing. The other thing is that people abuse fats. Sometimes they think that a raw vegan diet is eating a lot of almonds or trail mix or anything that they sell in forms
mm,
of nuts, processed, cooked or toasted nuts. That's not raw, and it's obviously detrimental because it causes indigestion if you mix fruit with nuts. It's terrible. Obviously afterwards you can wait probably half an hour to an hour after your fruit meal, and then you can have your nuts. I always keep my nuts and my fats for the end of the day, so that way there is no interference of mixing up fruit high water content with that solid dense um, fatty meal basically.
mm.
Those are the main mistakes, I think. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And one other thing on that is what kind of misinformation do you see out there? Because I think that in the raw vegan community, you know, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't been proven yet. There's probably not a lot of science around certain things, and maybe some of the science is unclear, and there's different opinions going around. I can think of, for example, years ago, a lot of people would talk about how the reason that raw food was good was because of enzymes, and when we cook food, we destroy enzymes, but when we put the food in our stomach, the enzymes get destroyed anyway. So I don't know how accurate that was. So there's been bits of information like that that sometimes make the raw food community look a little bit silly if we find
Yeah.
out that it's not really true. Is there anything particular that stands out to you in terms of some information that's out there, or things that people pass on? You know.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, and the time is limited. I really wish to start filming more YouTube videos explaining all this misinformation, which, you know, we don't have to, but not many people read the books that are that address these issues. So, for example, obviously, Doug Graham has 80-10-10 addresses many of these issues. But recently, Brenda Davis, which is a registered nutritionist, compiled a lot of research in terms of how and why raw veganism works if it's done properly. So she basically addresses the enzyme theory by proving with some studies that the stomach has two phases of digestion. So the first phase is you eat, and the upper part of your stomach, which is like a dome, stores the food for probably 20 to 25 minutes, and the acid in the stomach does not reach that dome. So basically, you have like a little reservoir in your stomach in the first phase of digestion, and that's when the enzymes start acting. So if you cook your food, that phase, the first phase of digestion in the upper part of the stomach, is not as efficient as if you were eating raw food, which still has enzymes. So just remember that digestion starts in the mouth.
Wow.
So if you start masticating something, you're breaking down the cell walls of the fruits and vegetables. And that whole reaction starts the digestion, but the enzymes in the raw foods start actually acting in that initial phase in the dome of the stomach. So the chlorhydric acid in the stomach only access the food when that bowl of food goes to the second phase, which is the antrum and the body of the stomach. That's where the highest concentration of acid is, and that's what everything starts to break down, including the enzymes of the raw foods. But there is a phase in the digestion process where the enzymes in the raw foods have an action. So it's a misconception that only, you know, raw foods are going to give you all the enzymes. No, because we produce digestive enzymes, but it gives you an advantage in terms of optimizing digestion and in terms of keeping some of the antioxidants alive for a long time, you know, because not everything is destroyed with the acid. Everything is break down, but not destroy like 100%.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's one. And then the other, oh my God, in the raw vegan community, we have infiltration from the naturopathic kind of magical thinking approach. And you have all these people that are doing herbs and, you know, all these formulas and glandulars, not mentioning any names, but it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary. Some people only are doing like grape and lemon juice fasting for years. Until when your body's going to trust you? You know, we can do the cleanse in our bodies. Is a byproduct of eating clean, eating what we are designed to eat. So we are depriving our bodies by doing all these long fastings with, you know, very acidic fruit, because fruit can be very acidic. So if you just keep eating grapes with lemon juice just to clean out whatever you need to clean out, it's detrimental. It's not sustainable. And I think that's one of the main mistakes, to follow these protocols that are unnecessary.
Yeah, so that comes on. I think there's definitely an approach to this lifestyle that is all about detoxification, cleansing, fasting, and personally, I don't see many people doing that long term and sustaining that. And I think that people who are doing that can get a little paranoid about being as clean as possible and can go develop fears and worries about perfectionism and things like that. But can you, what do you think about even juicing, juice cleansing, detoxification, all these things? What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, I think there's time for using if it's absolutely necessary. I did a juice fast because it's not fast, it's just juicing,
Mm,
because I thought that I will be helping my transition into raw veganism. And I actually did a 10-day juice fast because I couldn't overcome my addiction to this, back and forth, cooked raw,
hmm
cooked raw. So I said, okay, once and for all, 10 days, the last 10 days of December 2017, I'm going to do a juice fasting and I'm going to be raw afterwards. And I achieved that, but I think it's psychological as well. So yeah, definitely using can help you if you're still super toxic, and you can, because by using, you're letting the microbiome die, the microbiome that craves the cooked food.
hmm
But you can accomplish that also by being consistent with your raw food routine. But I mean, I guess it's easier just because of the psychological aspect as well. um, so I think the body is so wise that can detoxify itself maybe slower, by just sticking to raw foods. But I mean, I don't think it's detrimental if you do it just as a transitional phase, maybe a week or a couple of weeks, but no like 6 months or something like that. People keep using and go back and forth until when your body is gonna start trusting you
Mm.
to have
So
solid food.
excellent. So, but and the other thing I want to ask is the other thing that's in the raw food movement a lot, and I suppose broadly more in the alternative health, natural health movement, because when I look at people looking into healthcare, there's medical healthcare, which is
Yeah,
the kind of a standard what we have in doctors in hospitals, um, surgery, diagnosis of illness,
yeah,
prescription of medication and therapy, and so on. And also in the NHS, they do refer people to nutritionists and things like that. I don't know how successful it is because I know that a lot of people don't want to change their diet, but
mhm,
I know that that's available to people as well. Then we have alternative medicine, which is, or an alternative therapies, which from what I've seen basically is things that have not really been proven to necessarily be effective, or it's not, there's not a mechanism yet that proves it, but people that people uh, are still practicing that or trying these things, and some people have a benefit from it.
mm,
It's just not in the medical sphere. Uh, and I think the raw food community is somewhere between the alternative and another thing, which is really, um, looking at the things that people can do for themselves to avoid disease when it comes to changing your diet, improving your lifestyle and things. So, um, but within that sphere, there is a lot of people who are anti-medicine that would almost never take antibiotics dogmatically. They would, they have fears of medication. They don't want to take any medication. They wouldn't ever take a painkiller. They'd never go to the doctor. There's a lot of people that develop that kind of mindset. And could you maybe speak about that a little bit? And have you seen that it goes a little bit too far? I mean, maybe there is some people have had bad experiences with doctors. I understand that, but to
yeah.
completely, it's also dangerous to me to throw out the medical option when it might be the best option.
Definitely. So, you know, um, I always say if I get into an accident and I get a fracture and I get a bone exposed and the bone touches the soil, I'm not gonna, you know, uh, deprive myself from medical treatment. I would like to go into the hospital. I would like to have my bone washed and have a surgical procedure. I
Mm,
would like to have intravenous antibiotics because the soil in my bone can cause sepsis, which is a lethal disease, lethal condition to be in.
hmm
So I would accept antibiotics. I will accept morphine because a exposed bone fracture is super painful, and that's not gonna be, that's not gonna contrarrest or counteract all the benefits that I've gained with this lifestyle. The purpose of
Yeah.
this lifestyle is to be as healthy as you can possibly be in your lifetime. Remember that we are not immortals, that this lifestyle is not going to give you superpowers. We look like super powerful people because obviously the common denominator is sick people because of the way
Mm,
we eat. And some people confuse, optimal health, radiant health at your 100%, 99% to be realistic, with being super powerful and not needing medical care, conventional medical care. And I understand the sentiment because, myself, I've lost many family members due to totally preventable diseases, and the medical
mm,
system is only like um, not fixing the problem really. But I don't have any form of resentment, fortunately, because it was not. There are many traumatic stories, and people think that all medicine is evil. So just to prove you, like, doctors come into medicine to help people. Some of them come to get rich and, like anything, any career. But the sentiment is because there is this generalization that doctors want to make profit out of your health or your disease, and they disregard everything.
mm,
So I think it's, as you mentioned, it's dangerous because antibiotics sometimes are necessary, as I mentioned in this situation. Not because I drink green smoothie every single day, I'm not gonna be immune to this bacteria. Um, People that need corrective surgery for conditions that are not fixed by diet, they can deprive themselves from the benefit of modern medicine. So yeah, it's a dangerous approach. They shouldn't, throw the baby with the bathwater. That's the
mm.
thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
That's the phrase. Yeah, I definitely see people that start off, especially, I think there is a lot of people that have had bad experiences with doctors who have maybe said to them that their condition, they might have started with some condition and the doctors have said it's not to do with their diet and
yeah,
they shouldn't bother changing their diet and everything. So I can see that some people have seen, had these kind of negative experiences and
yeah,
have then found this information, been able to completely heal, transform their life. And from then on, there's a lot of information there. I don't know where it comes from really, but it seems to be that it's always been the case that there has been negativity, fear, paranoia sometimes towards medication, towards science, towards big organizations. And I really think that it doesn't help when uh, people think that everything can be solved by nature or by natural. I think this is the same thing with herbs that we are speaking about earlier on, where at one point herbs essentially were a form of medication, the only one that was available to people. But for some reason, people would trust that now more
yeah.
than the products that are made by pharmaceutical companies that basically come from herbs and plants and other things, but have just been refined and produced in such a way that they're more effective and so on. So yeah, but I'd like to know a little bit more. Sorry to butt in, but I would
Those,
like to know a little bit more about, as a doctor, in your training, more specifically, how much is there anything really about the dietary approach, for example, with things like diabetes, with heart disease? It seems quite obvious now that the information is there that this is caused by diet. Is that something that is very clear when you're practicing medicine, when you're studying it and so on?
well, I am probably not so young in terms of receiving my medical education. It's been a while. So the medical curriculum, I can guarantee you that is changing slowly,
Mm,
but still is focused on disease treatment rather than prevention. And disease treatment meaning managing diseases with drugs, with medication. Obviously, we are instructed in, what, for your diabetic patient, you should recommend exercise, you should recommend, um, you know, zero processed food
mm,
and natural beans and a lot of vegetables. Obviously, we receive that type of education, but it's not emphasized enough. And in my times, the fact that you can reverse diabetes with diet was unheard of. They
mm,
always say metformin or low sugar lowering drugs or things like that, insulin in severe cases. So it wasn't heard of. But now, there's a lot of push from plant-based doctors to change the whole system. And obviously, it's a political situation, because the systems that are installed to make pharmaceuticals gain more money, obviously, if you prescribe more medications, it's going to get compromised when people realize that, oh, eating healthy is going to avoid me to spend more money on drugs. So it's
Yeah.
a war. It's a war, for
Mm.
sure.
What do other doctors around you think of your approach and some of your ideas? Are they interested or curious, or not particularly interested in what you're doing?
My colleagues, or in general, or...
Yeah, your colleagues and I guess the medical community in general.
So, what's the problem? I think that everybody's so busy and trying to get, you know, to live their lives rather than seeing the whole picture. So, for
Mm,
example, so I'm telling you, I would like to produce more content, right, in terms of educating people about raw nutrition, etc. But I'm busy because my work confines me to just think inside the box. And the medical system, until there is not a big push, and now it's happening, the big push from people getting informed about veganism and stuff, until there is no a big push and some orders coming from above, the system is not going to change. And it's not lack of interest, it's lack of knowledge and lack of time. But now, with social media, everything is changing. So any doctor who is not aware of the benefits of plant-based diet is either super busy and doesn't have time to even look at the studies because has multiple patients waiting, or is because they're still in denial because there's so many contradicting information. Like there's doctors that promote keto diet, right? There are doctors that promote, I don't know, paleo diets.
yeah,
So we are still in this phase of conflicting information, and obviously the denial aspect, because some doctors still love their meat and their animal products. So as soon as you hear something that validates your point of view, you're not going to change
yeah,
regardless of the evidence. And for you and I, this knowledge just makes sense, and it's ridiculous to think otherwise. But for people who are still sleeping, and I'm telling you, I have colleagues which are super intelligent, more than me in their particular areas, and they still don't see it. It's
mm,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I think it's a challenge everywhere to
Yeah.
to because people just don't even. I mean, someone was saying to me the other day they met someone that said they never think about their diet, and they never even connect it to their health, and I forgot that that's what most people are in that situation, that they really don't think about their diet that much.
No.
Um, and let's talk about your own specialism in the brain.
Yeah.
Um, some of the problems that happen with the brain that people suffer from, especially later in life, uh, do you find good evidence that any of these are connected to diet? Could they
Yeah.
be resolved with dietary change? Is it too late for someone to make a change once these things have developed?
No, I don't think it's too late. There's always room for improvement, no matter how advanced your brain condition is. There is a chart, or not a chart, it's like a meme, an internet meme that says, what is good for your heart is good for your brain. So many people focus on plant-based diet to reverse cardiovascular diseases or diabetes or
Mm,
heart problems. Yes, I mean, diet is it's just like this reductionist way of thinking of Western medicine. Is like, oh, if you have something bad in your eyes, this is specific for your eyes. Or if you have like a problem with your liver, this is particularly for the liver, So this compartmentalized way of thinking has to end. Unfortunately, the public are still the last person to understand this principle. So again, what is good for your heart is good for your brain, meaning that the brain is not an isolated organ. And if you can reverse cardiovascular diseases, obstructions in the arteries of the vessels in the heart to prevent infarctions, you can definitely unclog the vessels in your brain that are actually causing some dementia problems. Most of the Alzheimer's disease cases are acquired, meaning environmental, that we can modify the risk factors that generate Alzheimer's. So again, what is good for your heart is good for your brain. If you exercise, if you eat a low-fat diet, if you eat a high plant, whole food plant-based diet, fruits and vegetables, especially raw, that's gonna do wonders for your heart. And because the brain also has arteries, that's gonna do wonders for your brain. Exercising as well. So everything that we know about lifestyle modifications, especially diet, for sure it's going to help you reverse some of the damage, like in dementia patients. There's different tons of classifications of dementia, but the most common one is, as I'm telling you, 97% of the Alzheimer's cases are environmental. Only
Wow.
3% are genetics. So
Wow.
you can definitely reverse Alzheimer's disease. And I'm not the one that is telling this, it's science. There is two doctors in Loma Linda, their last name is Sherzai. They're neurologists, and they have proven to reverse Alzheimer's disease in their patients.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yeah,
That is absolutely amazing. That information needs to get out there more and more.
yeah,
That's what we're trying. That's what we're all trying to do. Everyone that's listening, we're trying to get this information out to more and more people because no one should have to suffer just from ignorance and suffer really badly, you know. And I don't get it with, you know, my grandmother's in a dementia hospital, and I just think, why don't they feed them healthy food? They don't even know anymore, you know. They don't even know what they're eating anymore. Why can't they feed them healthier food? Why do they have to give them this bad stuff? But
yeah.
anyway, that's a shame. But I know that you're very tight on time. We've come up to about the end of our time. I'd love to have another conversation with you, maybe in a next week or another time. We can do a part two
Yeah, I would
because I
love
think
to.
there's a lot more to talk about. But we're really excited to have you at the Fruit Festival next year.
Yay.
Um, just before we go, is there anything in particular you're looking to kind of teach people at the festival, and any words of wisdom just to end our interview today?
So, yeah, I would like to, I mean, if thanks for the opportunity, first of all, to invite me for the festival next year. Um, yeah, I think it's super important to realize that our bodies are not, again, isolated organs, and that the same lifestyle modifications that we procure, that we use to procure our heart and every other organ, is like beneficial for all our economy. That's number one. Number two is that people should read and be their own gurus, and do not, put on a pedestal anyone, not even me. Like, credentials matter, yes, and I think I have some sort of authority and credibility based on my credentials. However, um, I think people have the capacity, the intellect, to actually grasp what really makes sense. So it's just a matter of getting more informed. Listen to your intuition. It's not a cliche to say the gut feeling, because actually, as I
Mm,
mentioned, we have neurons in our intestinal walls. So when you have a gut feeling, it's like the intuition. You should listen to that as well. So yeah, don't put anyone on a pedestal. Do your own research, experiment on yourself. Nothing is going to happen if you follow basic principles, obviously. And whenever somebody tries to sell you something, just question that person. Obviously, like in the future, my goals are to probably offer some services to people, because my time is valuable, and I need to charge for my services. But whoever tries to push you something like, I don't know, protein powders, I mean,
mm.
we know that proteins are in leafy greens if we want to increase our protein intake. Things like that, always question and always see beyond what this person is trying to tell you. So everybody is able to attain wisdom and knowledge. It's just a matter of being open-minded, experiment on yourself, trust people that are reliable, and your gut feeling is going to tell you who actually is preaching the real thing.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow Dr. Areli, she's online, Instagram, Raw Vegan Doctor, I believe YouTube as well, other places, Raw Vegan Doctor.
Yeah.
For Spanish speakers, she also has content in Spanish as well, which is excellent. So you can maybe share that with people that don't speak English or only speak Spanish. So that's excellent. Um, And she'll be at the Fruit Festival next year. If you want to learn more about the Fruit Fest, you can go to fruitfest.co.uk. It's a festival where it's a week-long experience. You can come along, accommodations provided, all your food's provided, 100% raw vegan. And it's a place where you can learn about this lifestyle from experts who come from all over the world to teach people about this diet and lifestyle. And it's a lot of fun too. So you can, if you wanted more information, you can go to fruitfest.co.uk/registration to sign up for the early registration announcement list. We've still got more work to do on that. It's not all ready yet. We don't have all the details ready yet, but if you want to hear about it, go to fruitfest.co.uk/registration. Thank you for listening to the podcast today, or the video. If you're watching on YouTube, feel free to share this, rate it, like it, send it to other people if you feel like this will inspire someone or help someone out. There's a lot of people out there who could really use this information and advice, and I'm sure would love to hear more from Dr. Areli. So thank you for listening, watching today, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Love Fruit podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronnie. Bye.
Bye.